I stopped waiting for her calls years ago, but some wounds never stop ringing. My name is Martha Green. I turned 56 this spring, in a little town tucked between the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. It's a quiet place, the kind where neighbors still wave when they drive by, and the church bells mark the passing hours like an old heartbeat. My days are simple now. I tend my roses, feed the stray cat that never quite lets me touch her, and try not to think too much about what's missing. I used to have a sister, Claire. Well, I still do, technically. Blood doesn't disappear, even when everything else does. We were just 2 years apart, inseparable as kids. She was the bold one, the one who climbed the apple tree and dared me to jump after her. I was quieter, the one who'd patch up her knees and keep our secrets safe. We used to say we were two halves of the same heart, but time has a cruel way of testing love. Ours cracked, somewhere between grief and pride. It started the year our mother passed away. Claire and I couldn't agree on what to do with the house. I wanted to keep it, that creaky, paint-peeling old place that smelled like cinnamon and prayers. Claire wanted to sell it, move on, start fresh. "It's just a house, Martha," she said. "We can't live in memories forever." But I wasn't ready to let go of the only place that still felt like home. The argument started small, about furniture, of all things. Then it turned into old resentments, flung words that cut deeper than we realized. I remember her shouting, "You always want to hold on to everything, even pain," and slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That was the last time I saw her face for nearly 10 years. After that, silence became our language. I sent a Christmas card one year. No reply. Called when our aunt died, straight to voicemail. Then, I stopped trying. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, that you're stronger alone. But the truth is, the quiet between sisters isn't peace. It's an ache that hums in the background of every day. I filled my life with small routines. Work at the clinic, Sunday dinners with my son, knitting blankets for church drives. But every time the phone rang, a part of me still hoped it might be her. And every time it wasn't, that little flicker inside dimmed a bit more. I told myself I'd made peace with it, that some things were just broken for good. But life has a strange sense of timing, because when my phone finally did ring, with her name flashing on the screen, it wasn't closure I found waiting. It was something far heavier. I thought the silence between us would last forever, until it didn't. It was a Thursday morning in late October. I remember because the first frost had settled over my garden, and the world looked like it was holding its breath. I was sipping my coffee, half listening to the radio, when my phone lit up. The name on the screen froze me mid-sip. Claire. For a second, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe one of those spam calls that spoof your contact list. But then, I saw her number. The same one I'd dialed countless times before and never reached. I answered, my voice shaky. "Hello?" There was a pause, a long, hollow silence that carried years inside it. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in almost a decade, thin and trembling. "Martha, it's me." I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding, my mouth dry. Part of me wanted to hang up, another part wanted to cry, and another, the nurse in me, wanted to ask if she was all right, because she didn't sound it. She spoke again, breathless. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. Please don't hang up." So I didn't. I just listened. She said she was in Charlotte Memorial Hospital, and her voice kept breaking. They said I don't have much time if I don't get a donor soon. At first, I didn't understand. Then she said the words that made everything tilt sideways. "It's my heart, Martha. It's failing." I remember setting my mug down so hard it cracked against the counter. my knees felt weak. All those years of silence, and the first thing she wanted from me was a part of myself. She went on, trying to explain through tears. The doctors had told her immediate family were most likely matches. Her husband was gone. No children. Our cousins weren't compatible. They said you might be my best chance, she whispered, and you were the only number that still worked. Those words echoed like thunder. The only number that still worked. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? That she'd been dead to me for 10 years and now wanted a piece of my living heart? That I'd begged for one call, one apology, one moment of sisterhood, and now that it came, it was wrapped in desperation. She kept talking, but my mind was somewhere else, in our childhood kitchen, where she used to braid my hair, both of us laughing over burnt pancakes. That memory felt so far away, like it belonged to strangers. I know I don't deserve to ask this, she said softly, but I didn't know who else to call. Her voice cracked, and then the line went quiet. I stared out the window for a long time after that call ended. The frost outside was melting, turning to tiny rivers that ran down the glass. My reflection looked older, harder. I'd built a life out of silence, but it seemed silence was finally calling my name back. I didn't know what to do. Every part of me screamed, "Don't go back there." But there was another voice too, quieter but steadier. The voice that had spent her life caring for others, that still believed kindness had power even when it hurt. I didn't make any promises that day, but that night I pulled out the old photo album I hadn't touched in years. On the first page was a picture of us, me and Claire, barefoot in the grass, arms around each other, our mother smiling behind the camera. It hit me then. Love doesn't just die. It hides under layers of pain, waiting for the right moment, or maybe the last one, to surface again. And maybe, just maybe, this was that moment. She didn't call to say she missed me. She called because she needed something only I could give. That night, I didn't sleep. The rain came down steady against the roof, and every drop sounded like a question I didn't want to answer. I kept thinking about her voice, how small it sounded. The same sister who used to shout over thunderstorms now barely whispered through one. I tried to push it away. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. After all, Claire had made her choice when she walked out of my life. But guilt is a stubborn shadow. It doesn't leave just because you turn off the light. I poured myself some tea around midnight and sat by the window, staring out at the dark hills. My reflection looked back at me, tired eyes, lines that had deepened over the years, and that same ache I thought I'd buried. Maybe I was angry because she'd forced me to feel again. I thought of the last real conversation we'd had, that terrible afternoon at our mother's house. The air had smelled like rain then too. Claire was pacing, furious, calling me selfish for wanting to keep the house. I'd said she only cared about money, that she'd forgotten where we came from. She'd thrown my words back at me. You think love means clinging to the past? You don't know what love is. That line stuck like a splinter for 10 years. Maybe because, deep down, I feared she was right. Now she was asking for something no one else could give her. Something that could save her life, but might break mine in ways I couldn't predict. I wanted to hate her for it. I wanted to hang up the phone and never think about it again. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was the two of us at age 10, catching fireflies in the backyard. I could hear her laugh, see the grass stains on her knees, and I realized I didn't want her to die. That was the truth I'd been avoiding. The next morning, I called my son Evan. He's 32, works in Charlotte as a mechanic. Practical, grounded, not one for drama. I told him about the call. There was a long silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Mom, After everything she did, you can't be serious. I haven't decided anything, I said softly. She's sick, Evan. She's always sick when she wants something. You remember that? She knows how to pull you in. Don't let her this time. He meant well. He'd seen what that fallout did to me. The years of loneliness, the letters never answered, the birthdays forgotten. I told him I understood, that I'd think it over. But when I hung up, my hands were shaking. Later that day, I visited my neighbor, Ruth, a widow in her 60s who bakes pies for everyone on the street. She has this quiet wisdom about her, the kind you only earn by surviving too much. We sat on her porch, the smell of apple pie drifting between us, and I told her everything. When I finished, she just nodded and said, "Sometimes forgiveness isn't for them, honey. It's for you." I looked at her, confused. "You can hold on to anger so long it starts to feel like armor," she said, "but armor gets heavy. Sooner or later, you've got to decide if you want to keep carrying it or finally set it down." That night, I took a long walk through the neighborhood, my coat pulled tight against the wind. Every house I passed had a light in the window, people inside, talking, living, forgiving. I wondered if my mother would have wanted me to go. I could almost hear her voice, gentle, patient. "Take care of each other, girls. The world's hard enough already." By the time I got home, I knew what I had to do, not because I owed Claire anything, but because I didn't want my story, our story, to end in silence. But how do you forgive someone who only remembers you when they're dying? The next morning, I packed a small overnight bag, some clothes, my Bible, and a photograph of our mother. I told Evan I was driving to Charlotte, just to talk, though I think we both knew it was more than that. It's a 3-hour drive from Asheville, but it felt longer. The road wound through the mountains, bare trees reaching toward a gray sky. I turned off the radio halfway there. Couldn't stand the noise. My mind was loud enough. When I reached Charlotte Memorial Hospital, I sat in the parking lot for a full 10 minutes before I could make myself go in. The smell of antiseptic and the echo of heels on tile hit me the moment I stepped inside. It was the same sterile world I'd spent 20 years working in. Comforting in a strange way, but heavy too. At the reception desk, I asked for Claire Green. The nurse pointed me down the hall, second floor, room 214. My palms were sweating. I walked slowly, counting each step like it might buy me more time. When I reached her door, I froze. What do you even say after 10 years? "Hey, sorry about the silence. Mind if I give you a heart?" Finally, I knocked. A faint voice said, "Come in." She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile. Her hair was thinner, her skin pale against the white sheets. For a moment, she didn't recognize me, or maybe she couldn't believe I'd actually come. "Martha?" she whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She started to cry, soft, gasping sobs that sounded like regret made real. I didn't move. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was tired. 10 years of walls crumbled in that sterile room. "I didn't think you'd come," she said finally. "I almost didn't." She smiled weakly. That would have been fair. We sat in silence. Machines hummed, and outside, a nurse's laughter echoed faintly through the corridor. She tried to speak again, but her voice faltered. I reached for the cup of water on her tray and held it out to her. Instinct, really. The same way I'd done for countless patients before. She looked at my hand, then up at me, and for the first time in years, she took it. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something smaller, quieter. Recognition. "I'm sorry," she said finally, barely above a whisper. "For everything. I thought I had more time." I wanted to tell her how much she'd hurt me, how many nights I'd stared at that phone waiting. But when I looked at her, This woman who'd once been my best friend, now fighting for every breath, the words felt useless. "I know," I said instead. "We talked for an hour, maybe more. She told me about her husband's death, how she'd moved to the city for work, how the loneliness crept in until she didn't recognize herself anymore. She said she thought about calling me 100 times, but couldn't find the courage. Before I left, she reached out, fingers trembling. The doctors, they'll test you, but don't feel like you have to, okay? Just seeing you again, it's more than I deserve." I squeezed her hand gently. "We'll see what happens." As I walked out of that room, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel so heavy. Maybe forgiveness doesn't start with words. Maybe it starts the moment you walk back through the door you swore you'd never open again. When I reached the parking lot, the sun was setting behind the hospital, turning the windows gold. I sat there for a while, watching the light fade, and I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But something had shifted. She looked so small in that hospital bed, and for the first time, I didn't see my enemy. I saw my sister. I thought that seeing her would make the decision clear. It didn't. If anything, it made it worse. The drive back to Asheville felt heavier this time. Every mile, but that night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers the doctor had given me. Information about donor testing, risks, recovery times. The words blurred together. I'd been a nurse for 20 years. I knew what those risks meant. Infection, complications, even heart failure. I wasn't young anymore. The phone rang again that evening. Evan. His voice was tight, controlled, like he was holding back worry. "Mom, please tell me you're not actually considering this." "I'm thinking," I said softly. He sighed. "Thinking is how you end up doing it." I didn't answer right away. I just listened to his breathing. My son has my husband's calm steadiness, but when he's afraid, his tone changes. A little boy under the man's voice. "I just don't want to lose you too," he said. "I'm not planning on going anywhere." Neither was Dad, remember? That silenced me. My husband, Ray, had died of a heart attack 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me, that now I might be giving mine away. After we hung up, I walked to the living room. The house felt too quiet, too full of ghosts. On the mantel sat a framed picture. Me, Claire, and our mother on her porch swing. Mom's hand rested on our shoulders like she was still holding us together. I picked it up and whispered, "What would you do, Mama?" No answer, of course. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock. But sometimes silence says more than words. I spent the next day thinking about everything, about the bitterness, the lost years, the things we'd never said. I realized that if I refused, she might die. And if she died, I'd have to live with that. Live knowing I could have saved her, but didn't. And deep down, I knew I couldn't carry that kind of guilt. That evening, I drove to the old cemetery on Maple Hill, where our parents rested. The air smelled of pine and rain. I sat by their graves for a long time, talking like I used to as a girl. Told them about Claire, about the call, about how scared I was. At some point, I said it out loud. "I'm going to do it." The words came out steady, not because I felt brave, but because I finally felt sure. When I returned home, I called the hospital and told them I'd come back for testing. The nurse on the other end sounded surprised, almost relieved. "You're a good sister," she said. I hung up before she could finish. I wasn't doing it to be good. I was doing it because love, the real kind, isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp and painful and asks everything of you. The next morning, I packed again, a smaller bag this time, and left before sunrise. The mountains behind me were dark silhouettes against the early light, like old guardians watching me go. As I drove, I whispered a quiet prayer. Please, just let this mean something. When I arrived, the nurses ran tests, blood, tissue, compatibility. Every beep and click of the machines felt like a clock ticking down. Hours passed before a doctor finally came in, smiling faintly. "You're a match," he said. The air left my lungs all at once. I walked into Claire's room later that evening. She looked up, eyes wide, uncertain. "I heard," she whispered. You're going to do it?" I nodded. "If the doctors clear it, yes." Her lip trembled. "Why? After everything I did to you, why?" I didn't have an easy answer. So I just said, "Because you're still my sister." She started crying again, silent tears that slid down her cheeks. I reached out, brushed one away, and for the first time in years, the space between us felt human again. That night, I lay awake in the hospital cot beside her room, listening to the distant hum of machines. Fear crept in, whispering all the what-ifs. But beneath the fear, there was a strange calm too. I signed the papers, knowing it might break me, but maybe, just maybe, it could heal something too. The morning of the surgery arrived before I was ready. Hospitals always have that same smell: disinfectant, coffee, and nerves. A nurse tied my hair back and placed a tag around my wrist. My heart raced, not from fear of the pain, but from what waited on the other side of it. Claire was in the prep room next door. I heard her laugh once, a small, shaky laugh that sounded more like a sob. When they wheeled me past her, she reached out a trembling hand and said, "Thank you." I smiled, though I don't know if she saw it. The anesthetic mask came down and everything went soft around the edges. My last thought before the darkness was of us as little girls, lying in the summer grass, tracing clouds and making promises to never grow apart. When I woke, it felt like surfacing from underwater. The light was harsh, the room quiet except for the rhythmic beeping beside my bed. My chest ached, a dull heaviness that pulsed with every heartbeat, one that now matched hers. The nurse leaned over and smiled. "It went well. She's stable." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until that moment. Tears slipped down the sides of my face, quiet and unstoppable. For the next few days, recovery blurred together. Sleep, painkillers, slow walks down the hall. Every time I passed her room, I hesitated. I didn't know if she'd want to see me, or if I was ready to face what we'd both just done. On the fourth day, I finally went in. She was sitting up, pale but alive. When she saw me, she started crying again. That raw, unguarded kind of crying that makes your throat ache just hearing it. "You did this," she whispered. "You gave me another chance." I pulled up a chair beside her. We gave each other one. For a while, neither of us spoke. She just reached out and took my hand, and I felt her pulse, steady, strong. My own heart beat alongside it, a quiet echo. That night, I dreamt of our mother again. She was standing by the porch, sunlight in her hair, smiling at us like we were still those two little girls. When I woke, I realized I wasn't crying anymore. A week later, the doctor cleared me to go home. Claire wasn't ready to leave yet, but she insisted on saying goodbye properly this time. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "Don't read it yet," she said. "Wait until you're home." The drive back to Asheville was peaceful. The trees were starting to bloom again, a soft mist rising from the valleys. The world looked new, or maybe I did. When I got home, I made tea and sat by the window. The paper still in my hand. I unfolded it slowly. It was a letter, short, but written in her old handwriting, the same looping script I used to copy when we were girls. It began, "Martha, I don't know how to thank you without it sounding small. You didn't just save my life. You gave me a chance to make things right. I've spent years running from guilt, from you, from love itself. I was wrong. I was proud. I thought needing someone meant being weak. But you showed me that real strength is the opposite. It's being brave enough to forgive even when no one asks you to. If I get another chance at this life, I want to spend it being the sister you deserved. Love always, Claire. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. The house was silent, except for the sound of my heartbeat. Steady, alive, and at peace. Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about finally remembering without hurting. And as I looked out at the first morning light spilling over the mountains, I realized something profound. Her heart might have been failing, but maybe it took a broken one, mine, to bring us both back to life. She was alive. But would we ever really forgive each other? Maybe we already had. 3 months passed. Summer rolled in, the kind that makes the air thick with heat and nostalgia. Life had settled into quiet routines again. I returned to my small-town hospital job, though I worked fewer shifts now. The doctors said recovery would take time. My scar had healed, but the tenderness lingered, a reminder that healing doesn't always happen skin deep. Every Sunday, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, looking out at the rolling blue ridges beyond the fence. I'd think about her, wonder how she was doing. The hospital updates stopped after the first few weeks. Just short messages saying Claire's improving, Claire's up and walking, Claire's responding well. No calls, no letters, just silence again. It hurt, though I tried not to admit it. I told myself she was probably still weak, still recovering. Maybe she didn't know what to say, but deep down, the old ache of being forgotten crept back in. Then one morning, the mail came. Among the bills and flyers, there was an envelope, cream-colored, slightly crumpled at the edges. My name written across it in her looping, unmistakable script. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a letter, longer this time, folded twice. A faint scent of lavender drifted out, the same perfume our mother used to wear. I took a deep breath and began to read. Dear Martha, I wanted to come sooner, but I didn't have the courage. Every time I thought of calling, I remembered the years I ignored you. Every time I thought of writing, I remembered the things I said. Or worse, the things I didn't. It took almost dying to realize how much of my life I wasted being proud. I told myself we were different, that you were the lucky one, the strong one, the one who had everything together. I used that story to justify pulling away from you. But the truth is, I was jealous. You had the love I couldn't hold on to, the peace I couldn't find. When you showed up at that hospital, part of me wanted to believe it wasn't real, that you'd come to gloat, to say, I told you so. But instead, you gave me the one thing I never deserved, another chance. You gave me your blood, your pain, your heartbeat, and somehow, that gave me back my soul. I'm better now, walking again. My doctors say my body's responding beautifully. Every time my heart beats, I think of you, because I know it's yours keeping me alive. I don't know how to repay you, but I want to try. If you'll let me, I'd like to come home, to sit on the porch again, to hear about your life, about Evan, about the years I missed, not as the sister who ran away, but as the one who finally found her way back. Love, Claire. I read it 3 times before I could breathe again. Tears blurred the words, but I didn't wipe them away. I just let them fall, heavy and cleansing. She wanted to come home. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the kitchen table beside my teacup. The sunlight spilled across it like a quiet promise. That afternoon, I called Evan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom, your Aunt Claire's coming to visit," I said. He went silent. Then, "You're sure that's a good idea?" "Yes," I said simply. "It's time." He didn't argue, just sighed softly, that same sigh his father used to make when he didn't have the right words. "Then I'll come by that weekend. I want to see her too." The next few days passed like waiting for rain. I cleaned the house, baked the lemon bread she used to love, and set 2 chairs on the porch. Everything had to feel like home again. On Friday evening, I saw her car pull into the driveway, a modest silver sedan. My breath caught. She stepped out slowly, still a little thinner than before, but her face glowed with color. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just looked at each other. 2 women carrying decades of silence, both unsure how to put it down. Then she smiled. "Hey, stranger." I laughed through my tears. "Took you long enough." She came forward and I met her halfway. We hugged, not the polite kind, but the trembling, bone-deep kind that feels like forgiveness and grief and love all tangled together. When we pulled apart, she looked at the mountains behind me and whispered, "I miss this view." "I missed you more," I said. That night, we sat on the porch until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing. About Dad's old radio, about Mom's favorite pie recipe, about the stupid fight that started it all. And somewhere between laughter and tears, the years just disappeared. She reached out and placed her hand over mine. "I still don't understand why you did it," she said quietly. I smiled, because I couldn't live with another grave between us. The wind stirred the trees, and in that moment, I swear I felt our mother's presence. Warm, soft, forgiving. For the first time in years, my heart felt whole again. It's been almost a year since the surgery. Claire moved back to Asheville last fall. She rents a small cottage a few miles away, close enough for Sunday dinners, far enough for us to breathe separately when we need to. We talk every day now. Sometimes it's just a text about a recipe or a photo of her garden, but every message feels like a small miracle. She started volunteering at the dialysis center where she was once a patient. Says she wants to help others before it's too late. When I visited her there last week, I watched her smile at a young man sitting in the same chair she once occupied. It hit me then. She'd become someone else. Softer, braver. One evening, as we were washing dishes, she said quietly, "You know, I think we both needed saving." I looked at her, really looked, and realized she was right. I hadn't just given her a kidney. I'd given her a way back to love. And in return, she'd given me back my purpose. Some scars never fade. Mine still aches on cold mornings, a dull pulse beneath my ribs. But it's no longer a wound. It's a reminder. A reminder that forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's a bridge you build so both of you can come home. On the anniversary of the transplant, we drove up to our parents' old house, what's left of it. The porch swing still creaked. The paint still peeled. We sat there with cups of coffee, the sun dipping low over the hills. She pulled out her phone and played an old voicemail, one I hadn't heard in years. It was our mother's voice, soft, warm, full of that unshakable love. In it, she said, "You girls promise me something. No matter what happens, don't let life keep you apart. Sisters are forever. You hear me?" We both cried. No words, just the sound of 2 hearts beating, one borrowed, one given, and the whisper of a mother's wish finally coming true. Before we left, Claire stood up, brushed her hands on her jeans and said, "You know, when I got sick, I thought it was punishment. Now I think it was grace. Ugly, painful grace. I nodded. Sometimes grace has teeth. She laughed. Yeah, but it also has your blood. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the heavy kind. It was the peaceful, shared kind. The silence of understanding. When I lay in bed that night, I thought about everything we'd lost and everything we'd gained. About how pain can twist you, but love, real love, untangles you, piece by piece. And I realized something simple, something final. Sometimes life doesn't give you the ending you wanted. It gives you the ending you need. She ignored my calls for years. But when she needed me, I answered, not because she deserved it, but because I finally understood that love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I chose her, not out of duty, not out of pity, but because I wanted to live in a world where forgiveness is stronger than pride. So now, when people ask about my scar, I just smile and say, it's where my sister's heart learned to beat again. And maybe in some small, miraculous way, so did mine.